Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaranari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaranari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. So we'll be discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10, verse number 24. So you can repeat after me. Tanme bhavan naradeva bhimana madena tucci krata sattamasya krishishta maitri drisham artabandho yatha tare sad avadhyanam amha tanme bhavan naradeva bhimana madena tucci krita sattamasya krishishta maitri drisham artabandho yatha tare sad avadhyanam amha tanme bhavan naradeva bhimana madena tucci krita sattamasya krishishta maitri drishamartha bandho yatha tare sad avadhyanam amha
Tanme bhavan naradeva vimana madena tucci krita sattamasya Krishishta maitri drishamartha bandho yatha tare sad avadhyanam ammaha
Tanme bhavan naradeva vimana
madena tucci krita sattamasya krishishta maitri drishamartha bandho yatha tare sad avadhyanam ammaha. Word to word meaning. Tat, therefore, me, unto me, Bhavan, your good self, Naradeva Abhimana Madena, by madness due to having the body of a king, and thus being proud of it, Tucci Krata, who has insulted, Sattamasya, you who are the best among human beings, Krishishta, kindly show, Maitri Drisham, your causeless mercy upon me like a friend, Arthabandho, O friend of all distressed persons, Yatha, so, Tare, I can get relief from Sat Avadhyanam, neglecting a great personality like you, Amha, the sin. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Whatever you have spoken appears to me to be contradictory. O best friend of the distressed, I have committed a great offense by insulting you. I was puffed up with false prestige due to possessing the body of a king. For this, I have certainly become an offender. Therefore, I pray that you kindly glance at me with your causeless mercy. If you do so, I can be relieved from sinful activities brought about by insulting you. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that by offending a Vaishnava, one finishes all his spiritual activities. Offending a Vaishnava is considered the mad elephant offense. A mad elephant can destroy an entire garden which has been developed with great labor. One may attain the topmost platform of devotional service, but somehow or the other, if he offends a Vaishnava, the whole structure collapses. Unconsciously, King Rahugana offended Jad Bharat, but due to his good sense, he asked to be excused. This is the process by which one can be relieved from Vaishnava Prad. Krishna is always very simple and by nature merciful. When one commits an offense at the feet of a Vaishnava, one must immediately apologize to such a personality so that his spiritual advancement may not be hampered. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapit Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Sha Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyat Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratushe Nama He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpataro Bhisha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mokam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim Yat kripa tamham vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramanand Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna. So I'll just give a background of this verse before starting with this. So as we have already discussed regarding this, that how Maharaj Rahugana was being carried on a palanquin by a few men, and they were looking for one another person, they were looking for one more carrier, and somehow they saw this person, somehow they saw Jad Bharat. Now they could not understand about him, they did not know how he was an elevated personality, and they somehow or the other forced him to also carry the palanquin, to help them to carry the palanquin. And now after when Jad Bharat started carrying the palanquin, so as we all have discussed, that the other three persons, they were Shudras. Their only aim was just to satisfy their master, how to please Maharaj Rahugana. But here Jad Bharat was a Vaishnava, a great elevated personality. So when he was helping them in carrying the palanquin, he was very, very careful. Though he didn't resist while they were forcing him, he didn't say anything. But while carrying the palanquin, since he was a Vaishnava, he was very, very careful not even to step on an ant. So while he was moving and he was seeing the ants that were passing by, so he was stopping, giving them way, and then he was moving ahead. And that's why, as we all know, that how the palanquin was again and again becoming unsteady. Again and again, the palanquin was shaking here and there. And this irritated Maharaj Rahugana. This Maharaj Rahugana was displeased by this. And so first he chastised Jad Bharat. First he chastised the other people. He said that, what are you doing? Why are you not carrying the palanquin properly? And when they pointed out, oh, this is the person who is responsible. Jad Bharat is the one who is not carrying the palanquin properly. And then he's passed Maharaj Rahugana in a very tactical way, passed some sarcastic comments. He says, "Oh, you look like very old." So though he can see that he was a very young person, very stout and strong person, but he sarcastically said all these things, that you look very old. You look very lean and thin. And it appears you have been carrying, since you have been carrying the palanquin for a long time, you have become tired by this. But he could understand that he knew that he just started carrying the palanquin and he was a young, fit person. So like that, he sarcastically passed some comments, offended him, chastised him, so that he started carrying it properly. But then Jad Bharat was on a different level, as it's described. He was on the Brahma Bhuta level. He was a fully self-realized person. So he was not affected. He was not at all in the bodily conception of life. So he was not at all affected by what Maharaj Rahugana said. And he again started carrying in the same way, again started stopping intermittently, and again the palanquin was being unsteady. And now Maharaj Rahugana became really angry, got really irritated by him. And then he started shouting that, "You fool, you rascal, what are you doing? Don't you know I am your master and you are my servant and you are meant to do what I say?" And then he even threatened him that just like Yamraj punishes sinful people after death, even I can punish you. And that's how he threatened him. And that's where we finally see that Jar Bharat starts speaking. Now before that, it's described, it's not because that Jar Bharat was now fearful of punishment. Jar Bharat was fearful that now I may get punished by him or he may do something to me, so he starts speaking. He just starts speaking to shower his mercy or to give Maharaj Rahugana some knowledge. Even before we see in the pastime in this context, when the dacoits had abducted Jar Bharat, when they were offering him as a sacrifice to goddess Kali, when they were about to kill him, about to chop his head off, forget about resisting, forget about speaking, Jar Bharat didn't even utter a word. Because it's described they were completely in ignorance. And there was no point in speaking to them. Similarly, when his brothers exploited him before, when his brothers mistreated him in different ways, they were forcing him to work in the agricultural field just in return of some food. And they were giving him those broken grains, those burnt up rice that was there in the pot. All that they were doing, but he still didn't speak. He didn't do anything. He didn't resist it in any way. Because it's described they were in the mode of passion. And there's no use of speaking to such people. But here he could see that this person, Maharaj Rahugana, he was primarily in the mode of goodness. Though because he was a king, due to his bodily conception, he had tinges of the mode of passion, but still he was in the mode of goodness. And as we all know, he was going to Kapil Ashrama to listen from Kapil Dev. So Jad Bharat could understand this clearly. And that's the reason he started speaking. He started giving him the teachings. So very, very important point we understand here, a very important point we see here, that a spiritually elevated personality, he doesn't speak anywhere and everywhere. He only speaks to someone who he sees can assimilate and can understand his instructions. He didn't speak when the dacoits had abducted him. He didn't speak anything to his brothers. But here he could see that this person can understand. This person has some goodness in him. And so Jad Bharat starts giving his instructions. Even we see similar pastime once Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So one person came to meet him. And that person started speaking, "Oh, you are that son of Bhakti Vinod. I knew your father very well. He was a very good friend of mine and we used to have a lot of discussions and I used to teach him the Bhagavad Gita. I used to teach him various shlokas." Like that on and on he continued. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was silent. He didn't speak anything. And finally he spoke. He said that you may know someone, but you don't know my father. You don't know who was Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Because knowing such a great personality, knowing such an advanced personality means hearing from him. Hearing his instructions, following his instructions. As Prabhupada writes, that spiritual advancement of a person can only be seen when he speaks, when he shares his realizations, and of course lives up to that. So he said that you may be knowing some person, but you don't know my father. And of course, here also in this pastime, we see that when he saw that this person can actually understand my teachings, that's when Jad Bharat starts speaking. So it's a very, very important point when we meet some spiritually elevated personality, when we meet someone who is greater than us in realizations, that we hear from him. Rather than trying to act smart and teaching him some lessons, we should always hear from him. So coming back, when Jad Bharat finally spoke and he starts giving all those teachings, he starts speaking, describing the difference between the body and the soul, that how he was actually, externally it appeared he was being the one who was carrying the palanquin, but he was not at all carrying the palanquin. It was the body who was carrying the palanquin. And like that, he continued, gave various teachings to Rahugana. And finally, hearing those teachings, Rahugana came back to his senses. He understood that he is some elevated personality. Now here one point is very, very interesting, is that Rahugana did not understand everything which Jad Bharat spoke. And that we can see even in these purports, whatever questions he's asking, whatever the shlokas he asked, that the instructions you gave, they are not very clear. And it was not that the instructions given by Jad Bharat, they were straightforward. They were also a bit mysterious, enigmatic. And Maharaj Rahugan, he didn't have the fortune to attend, like we have the level 1, level 2 programs. He didn't have the fortune to attend all those. He directly attended the Tuesday evening class. So he couldn't understand whatever was spoken by Maharaj Rahugana, whatever was spoken by Jad Bharat. And that's why he clarified. But one thing he could understand is that the instructions that were given, they were very profound. They were deep, and he could understand they are in line with the scriptures. And that's why he surrendered to Jad Bharat. He begged his forgiveness. So here we see how Prabhupada writes in the purport, and in the next verse also, as Jad Bharat says, that although I have committed an offense by insulting you, I know that there is no loss or gain for you due to my insult. Because he knew this is a self-realized soul. He doesn't care for any insult. He is not affected by all this. You are fixed in your determination, but I have committed an offense. Because of this, even though I may be as strong as Lord Shiva, I shall be vanquished without delay. So here we can understand that Rahugana was actually very, very intelligent. He knew the gravity of the mistake he had done. He knew the gravity of the offense he has done. And that's why he speaks all this. That's why he begs forgiveness. When we already discussed that when the worshippers of Kali, who wanted to please the goddess Kali, who abducted Jad Bharat, who were about to chop him, just for the satisfaction of goddess Kali. And what happened later, the goddess Kali herself burst out of the deity, and with the same chopper, they were about to cut the head of Jad Bharat. She took that chopper and she cut all the heads off. And as we all know, after that, she played some games with it. So being a Vaishnavi, devotees cannot tolerate offense to other Vaishnavas. They cannot tolerate, and even the Lord is displeased. Even he cannot tolerate offense to Vaishnavas. And Rahugana was very intelligent to know all this, to understand all this, and that's why he begs forgiveness. He immediately, when he understood, he got out of the palanquin and he prostrated himself in front of Jad Bharat and he begs for forgiveness. Another point he mentioned in this verse is, he says, I have committed a great offense by insulting you. I was puffed up with false prestige due to possessing the body of a king. So very, very important point he mentioned, that I was proud because I was a king. And we see a similar verse was there in the Kunti Maharani prayers, where she says, Janma Aishwarya Shruta Shebi Edam Anan Madhapuman. That one who possesses these four things, one who possesses a very aristocratic birth, one is born in a very, very rich family, a high Janma he has. Aishwarya, one who has lots of opulences. Shruta, one who has a high education. And Shibi, one who has beauty. So people who have all this, they are madha, they are intoxicated by all this. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that every wealthy person will be like that, every wealthy person will be atheistic or proud, and every poor person will be a pure devotee. But what it means is that generally people who have all these facilities, they become too much proud of their possessions. Because they have a strong sense, they feel they are secure, they have everything, they don't need to take shelter of anyone. And that's why in those prayers, Kunti Maharani says, Nevar ati abhidatum vai tvam akinchana gocharam. That those people who are intoxicated with all these things, who are intoxicated with a high birth, with all these possessions, they are not able to take the name of the Lord helplessly. Because they feel they have everything, they do not need to take the shelter of the Lord. And even if they take the holy names, even if they chant the holy names, they are not able to do it in quality. Here we see the same thing that Rahugana is saying. That I was puffed up because I identified myself as a king. I was puffed up because of my opulence that I had. And that's the reason I offended you. So here, now he understood his glories, now he understood how great Jad Bharat was when he started speaking, so he begged forgiveness from Jad Bharat. He fell at his feet. And Prabhupada writes there that unconsciously King Rahugana offended Jad Bharat. But due to his good sense, he asked to be excused. Because he had in some intelligence, he had some little bit more of goodness, he could understand he had committed a mistake. And now in the purport, Prabhupada writes, offending a Vaishnava is considered the mad elephant offense. He is quoting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that how this offense of a Vaishnava is a very, very grave offense. It's considered like a mad elephant offense. And here he says that Rahugana, although he unconsciously, unknowingly committed this offense, what he did a simple thing, that is begged for forgiveness. And that is what Prabhupada writes, that is the simple way to get relieved from Vaishnava Prad. Simply by begging forgiveness from that very Vaishnava whom we have offended, we can get relief from this. This is how Prabhupada writes that Krishna is by nature very merciful and always very simple. So if one person realizes his mistake, one person realizes that he has committed an offense at a Vaishnava and begs forgiveness, then he can be relieved. And we'll see in the course of our spiritual journey also, sometimes by mistake, unintentionally, unknowingly, we may commit offenses at the feet of Vaishnavas. But then as soon as we realize, as soon as we understand that what mistake we have done, it's very, very important that we beg for forgiveness. We try to rectify that mistake. Of course, the first best thing is that we do not commit offenses altogether. That is what all the practices we do, the sadhana that we do, the reading, hearing that we do, that is to bring us to that stage. So that even at the spur of a moment, we know how to properly respond to situations, how to deal with different Vaishnavas appropriately. That is what it should bring us. But then that is not always possible. If that is not the case, then the second best thing is that when we realize that we have committed some grave offense, when we have committed a mistake, we actually understand and we beg for forgiveness from that Vaishnava. But the worst case is that we commit an offense and instead of begging for forgiveness, we start justifying it. We start giving excuses. That is the worst case. And here we see how Rahugana, as soon as he realized that he had committed an offense, he begs forgiveness from Jad Bharat. He very humbly begs for forgiveness. So now it's described about the mad elephant offense. So this we all know how in Prayag, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he instructed Rupa Goswami. He instructed him for 10 days on the Dashashwamedh Ghat about the science of devotional service, which Rupa Goswami later gave in form of various scriptures. One of the primary scriptures, Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion, which describes about this science, which describes about these offenses in detail. And one of that offenses is this offense to the devotee. So in those teachings, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed that how a living entity goes through the evolutionary cycle, goes through many births, takes many forms of life, and finally comes to the human form of life. And in that human form of life, if he is fortunate, as it said, Brahmant Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jeev. If he is fortunate, then he gets the association of Guru and Krishna. And by their mercy, that seed of devotional service is implanted into him. He gets that Bhakti Lata Beej. And now, how to nourish that Bhakti Lata Beej? So the watering process is the Shravanam and Kirtanam Vidhu. All the sadhana we do, that hearing, chanting of the holy names, hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, attending all the programs, that is for nourishing that Bhakti Lata Beej. And also, there is the soil, there is the fencing that is around that Bhakti Lata Beej. And that is compared to the Vaishnav qualities that we develop. So when we speak about these qualities like humility, forgiveness, tolerance, all these qualities acts like a fencing around that Bhakti Lata Beej to protect that Bhakti Lata Beej, to protect that creeper. It also acts as a fertility of the soil. The soil becomes more fertile so that the Bhakti Lata Beej can grow nicely. And here he describes that how if someone, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes that how if someone commits an offense against the Vaishnava, so that is like a mad elephant. Now just imagine a mad elephant entering a nicely trimmed garden fenced with fencing. So he'll break all the fencing and he'll uproot all the plants that are there, all the creepers that are there. And that's what the mad elephant, that's what the offense of a Vaishnava is considered like. That's what it's described. So when we offend a Vaishnava, multiple things happen. One, of course, we lose our taste. Whatever, anyways, we don't have much taste. Whatever little bit there is, we even lose that. And secondly, our enthusiasm and our eagerness to practice devotional service to do all the activities, that also goes down. Because when we offend a Vaishnava, since the Vaishnavas are very, very dear to the Supreme Lord, so it said that the Lord always keeps the Vaishnavas in their heart. So when we offend the Vaishnavas, the Lord is displeased. And so it becomes very, very detrimental for a devotional service. And we have very, like many classic examples given in the Bhagavatam, given the Chaitanya Charitamrita regarding this. So we'll try to discuss few of the examples. So for one we already discussed the example of the dacoits who wanted to offer Jad Bharat as a sacrifice before goddess Kali, and they were all vanquished, they were all destroyed. And here Rahugana also committed an offense, but he also was very intelligent. When he realized he had committed an offense, he begged for forgiveness. Another example we see in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that is the example of Daksha. The example of Daksha who offended Lord Shiva. So here in this case we see Maharaj Rahugana, he unconsciously committed an offense. But there Daksha, due to his deep-rooted envy, due to his enviousness of the glorious position of Lord Shiva, knowingly and purposefully committed that offense. He was very proud of his position that he had. He was the greatest of all Prajapatis. He was the leader of all the Prajapatis. And so he was very, very envious of Lord Shiva. And he was so envious that even in the public assembly of all the sages, all the Prajapatis, he publicly criticized him. He publicly said a lot of things about Lord Shiva, that this person does not deserve any sacrificial oblations or any share of the sacrificial oblations that are there. And he even said to the extent that he's a monkey-eyed, this monkey-eyed rascal, he doesn't deserve my daughter. And it is only because of my father. It is only because my father forced me, pressurized me, that is Lord Brahma. That's why I married my daughter to him. So here we see how Daksha was so proud of his possession, so he became so proud that he didn't even spare his own father. He offended his own father, he offended Lord Shiva. And later, as we all know the story, that how when Sati came to the sacrifice, Sati was neglected and she burnt herself up. And because of that, Lord Shiva became so angry, he sent Veerbhadra to kill Daksha. And Veerbhadra chopped his head off. And finally, so much ruckus was created in the sacrifice. So much so that Lord Brahma himself prayed to Lord Shiva. And when finally Lord Shiva was pacified, so he gave Daksha a goat head. And then Daksha also begged forgiveness from Lord Shiva. There are prayers which he prayed to Lord Shiva. But then one thing we see here, that even after all this, even after all that happened, even after begging forgiveness, the tendency to commit offense or that deep-rooted anartha didn't go away. So there is another story that comes in the 6th canto. In another Manvantara, when he took next life, when Daksha took next life in the form of son of Prachetas and Marishi, even that tendency to commit offense even continued that time. So we see in that life how he did some austerities, he did some sacrifices, chanted some mantras to please Lord Vishnu. And it said that even Lord Vishnu personally appeared in front of him, in front of Daksha. But even after all that, he was not completely purified. Later we see how when Narad Muni came, Narad Muni he begot 10,000 sons. And Narad Muni came, he met all those 10,000 sons and he preached to them and made them renunciants, made them brahmacharis. And Daksha was irritated by this. Daksha again begot 1,000 sons and again somehow or the other Narad Muni met them and again made them renunciants. And now Daksha was very, very displeased. And of course, Narad Muni was thinking the opposite way. Narad Muni thought that maybe now he must have got detached from all this. Now he must have realized that all this is not useful. So when finally Narad Muni came to meet Daksha, Daksha actually offended him. Daksha cursed him. Daksha said that you are not fit to be a sadhu. You are a sadhu. You are not a genuine sadhu. And may you not have any permanent residence. May you not live in any place for a long time. This is how Daksha even offended Narad Muni. And of course, we all know that this curse served as a blessing for Narad Muni. So he keeps on going to different places, preaching to different people. But the thing is how deep-rooted the offense, the tendency to commit offenses was. That Daksha ended up committing offenses against two Mahajanas. First Lord Shiva and then against Narad Muni. This is how big a problem, this is how big or grave this offense of committing offense, this is how grave this mistake of committing offense at the feet of a Vaishnava is. Another example we see in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. We see the example of two disciples who were from the same spiritual master, two disciples, and they took initiation from him, learned from him. But then one of them turned out to be a very great disciple, served his spiritual master very, very nicely. But the other one ended up offending his spiritual master. So anyone can guess who two were these?
Ishvara Puri and
Correct. Ishvara Puri and Madhavendra Puri.
no, Ishvara Puri and
Sorry, Ishvara Puri and Ramachandra Puri. So we see how in this example, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, this comes, that how the two disciples of Madhavendra Puri, one was Ishvara Puri, very, very devoted to Madhavendra Puri, very loyally and nicely serving Madhavendra Puri, taking care of him, and doing all kinds of menial services also to him. And how there was the other disciple, that was Ramachandra Puri. So it's described how due to his association with those Gyanis, association with some impersonalist, he actually became an offender. So in the last stages of his life, when Madhavendra Puri was bedridden, when he was on his bed, and he was kind of indisposed, he could not do anything himself. Even for attending nature's call, he needed the help of his disciples. Ishvara Puri very nicely served him, very nicely took care of him, very nicely did all the menial services for his spiritual master. And in that time, Madhavendra Puri was crying, was feeling intense separation from Krishna. And in that mood, he was piteously crying. But Ramachandra Puri could not understand all this. Due to his association with those Gyanis, due to his association with the people who were impersonalist, he actually could not understand the emotions of his own spiritual master. And he went on to criticize his own spiritual master. He said that, what are you doing? Why are you crying? You should be in transcendental bliss. And that's how he offended his own spiritual master. And Madhavendra Puri was very irritated. He was very irritated on hearing this, and he asked him to go away and never show his face again. This is how Ramachandra Puri committed an offense at his own spiritual master. And even in this case, we see how the offensive mentality or the offensive tendency even continued. We see later in Puri, Ramachandra Puri met with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And even in that pastime comes, since Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was the disciple of Ishvara Puri. So he respected Ramachandra Puri, he respected him just like his spiritual master. But even there, the offensive mentality of Ramachandra Puri continued to such an extent that he even offended Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So one pastime that comes is when Jagdanand Pandit invited Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramachandra Puri and one more devotee to his house, and he fed them sumptuously, he fed them Jagannath Prasad sumptuously. And all of them took nicely, all of them ate nicely, and after that Ramachandra Puri commented. He said that, oh, till now I just heard that these sannyasis, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his disciples, they eat more than required. But now I have personally seen that how these people eat much more than what is required. And he says that how a sannyasi should be regulated in his eating habits. If he eats more than what is required, then he breaks the regulative principles, he breaks his renounced order. And that's how, of course, the principle that he was speaking in Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita even speaks something like that. He speaks to Arjuna that a yogi should not eat more than required, should not eat less than required. He should not sleep more than required, he should not sleep less than required. So the principle was not correct. I mean, the principle what Ramachandra Puri spoke, that was correct. But then because he was blinded by the offense he had committed at his own spiritual master, he could not understand that this was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. And he ended up criticizing even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And later on, it's described that how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reduced his eating to 1/4 of what he used to eat, and all his disciples, they became very upset. They became very aggrieved seeing the condition. And even when that was heard by Ramachandra Puri, he didn't appreciate that. Even still, he continued on criticizing, and he said the same thing, that a sannyasi should not eat more than required and he should not even eat less than required. This is how he continued offending in all the situations. He just was inclined on finding out fault in the devotees, and even finding out faults in the Supreme Lord himself. This is how grave, or this is how big a blunder is when we commit a Vaishnava aparadha or an offense to a devotee. And this is how in the course of time we see how Ramachandra Puri lost all his spiritual as well as material fortune. Everything was lost. Another example we see of Shivas Thakur. So in the Shivas Uncle, we all know how there used to be ecstatic kirtans, how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all his disciples, all the devotees, associates, they used to come, they used to have the night kirtans. And there was one materialistic Brahmana who was very, very envious of Shivas Thakur, who was very, very envious because of the fame of Shivas Thakur. And he wanted to disrespect him, or he wanted to defame Shivas Thakur. So that time Shivas Thakur was considered a great Vaishnava. And this person wanted to show that this person is externally showing himself as a Vaishnava, but he is not a Vaishnava. So what he did is he placed the paraphernalia of Durga worship in front of the gate of Shivas Thakur. He placed all those items, abominable items like a pot of wine and different things like red flour and many other things in front of his house, just to defame, just so that people when they see all this, they feel that Shivas Thakur is actually a Durga worshipper. He's not a Vaishnava. Next morning when Shivas Thakur came out of his house, he saw all that. He became a little surprised, but he was not much affected. He took the help of some neighbors and he just cleared it all up. And even the neighbors, no one actually believed, he was not actually defamed by all that. They just thought someone has played some bad joke on him, because they knew how great a person he was, how he was a Vaishnava. So here we see Shivas Thakur was neither defamed, neither he was affected altogether by all of this. But then the Brahmana, whose name was Gopal Chapal, after 3 days he got leprosy. And he was banished from the village. He had to live outside the village. Just by offending a pure devotee, just by offending a Vaishnava, he suffered this. And later on it continued. Later on it's described how he begged forgiveness from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu refused to forgive him and asked him to beg forgiveness from the person he has offended. And finally he begs forgiveness from Shivas Thakur and he was relieved of his offenses. But this is how we see this, how grave or how tendency of Vaishnava Aparadha is like that it keeps on continuing. A person who commits one offense, he keeps on continuing that offense. He keeps on continuing finding faults in each and every devotee, and even the Supreme Lord himself. So like that, similarly, we see that how there are so many examples, even in the Bhagavatam. We see the example of Durvasa Muni, who committed an offense against Amrish Maharaj, and how he traveled all across the 3 worlds just to protect himself from the Sudarshan Chakra. And Durvasa Muni was so powerful a yogi that he even approached the Supreme Lord Vishnu himself for protecting him from the Sudarshan Chakra that was running behind him. But then even Lord Vishnu said that he cannot do anything. Until and unless the devotee forgives him, until and unless Amrish Maharaj forgives him, he won't be able to do, and nothing can save him. So this is how many pastimes we see in the Bhagavatam, many pastimes we see in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which describes that how if a person commits an Vaishnava offense, all his spiritual credits, all his spiritual potency is destroyed, completely destroyed. One more example that I can think of is of Rupa Goswami. How we see that such an elevated personality as Rupa Goswami, when he was in meditation, when he was meditating on the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, how they were engaged in all their pastimes, and a limping Brahmana happened to come by that place. And Rupa Goswami was in deep meditation, thinking about the pastimes of the Lord, and he started laughing due to some pastimes. But this limping Brahmana thought that he was laughing at him, and he became offended. And then he approached his big brother Sanatan Goswami, and he told him so and so that your brother offended me, your brother laughed at me. And Sanatan Goswami could not believe this. Sanatan Goswami knew that my brother is a very elevated personality. He would not do such a thing. So now Sanatan Goswami also tuned into the same channel. He also started seeing what his brother was seeing. And then they saw some pastimes of the Lord, that how Radharani was plucking branches from a tree, and Krishna had held that branch, and finally Krishna let go of that branch. And so Radharani went up in the air and she called out for her Sakhis, and then all of them came to bring her down. And seeing this, Rupa Goswami had actually started laughing. And when Sanatan Goswami saw all this in meditation, he also started laughing. And now that Brahmana saw, Are to dono bhai ek jaise hai. Both the brothers are alike, it seems. But then finally Sanatan Goswami clarified to him that this is what was happening. Rupa Goswami was meditating on this pastime, and this is why he was laughing, and he was not laughing at your situation. And finally, when Sanatana Goswami clarified, then that Brahmana realized that then Brahmana was specified, and he realized that he had actually committed an offense at Rupa Goswami. He had committed an offense thinking that Rupa Goswami was offending him. And finally, that person, that limping Brahmana, went to Rupa Goswami. And till that time, even Rupa Goswami's meditation had broken. He had realized that he had committed an offense. And both of them begged for forgiveness from each other. And it's described even after they did that, even after they forgave each other, there was some vacuum that was still left. They were not feeling that same ecstasy. And now both the people again went back to Sanatana Goswami. And finally they told him that this is what has happened. We have forgiven each other, and still we are feeling some vacuum within us. And that is when Sanatana Goswami made them sit and spoke Krishna Katha at length. And finally, hearing the pastimes of the Lord, hearing the glorifications of the Lord, they again revived that ecstasy. That vacuum was removed. So this is how even we see in the life of perfected devotees, even unknowingly when some offense happens, how that devotion gets affected, or how their ecstasy gets broken, that meditation breaks. So with all these pastimes, discussing all these pastimes, what are the lessons we can learn from this? Or what we can take away from this? So very, very important thing, that first, as a sincere aspiring devotee, we should avoid fault finding with others. We should avoid fault finding in other devotees, criticizing other devotees, especially the spiritual master, the elevated personalities. Because Maya always tricks us. Maya always makes us feel that makes anyone feel that he knows or he's more spiritually realized than he actually is. And that's why we start offending others, thinking that we know more than our peers, we know more than our superiors, and we know even more than our spiritual master. And that's the root cause we start offending others, because of the trick of Maya. So that's why we should understand that how the Vaishnava Aparadha is so dangerous, and avoid criticizing others, because this acts like poison. So one time it's described that one of the Srila Prabhupada's disciple, he was describing about the offenses to holy names. He was talking about this Vaishnava Aparadha, and he said that it's very, very dangerous and one should never commit an offense against the spiritual master. And Prabhupada was there. Prabhupada intervened him in the middle of the class. And Prabhupada said that not just the spiritual master, not just any highly elevated Vaishnava, not the temple president, one should not commit an offense against any Vaishnava or any devotee for that matter. Because committing an offense against any Vaishnava, that tendency develops to commit offense, and then we end up committing offense against senior devotees or senior Vaishnavas also. So first and the very important thing is we should avoid this fault-finding tendency and criticizing other devotees. One more example I heard when it was the inauguration of this Pushpa Samadhi of Srila Prabhupada in Mayapur. So that time a huge crowd had gathered there. In Mayapur, a huge crowd they didn't anticipate so many people, but a huge crowd of localized devotees had gathered in Mayapur. And seeing all this, the managers that were there, the managers who were responsible for all the arrangements, for all the infrastructure, they were not able to keep calm. Because of the huge crowd, the railings that were there, one of the railings broke. And one of the manager, he just went crazy. He just started manhandling devotees, pushing people just to bring them in order. And at that time, one of the senior devotees, His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj, he happened to be there. He happened to come there. And just when he saw this devotee doing all this, misbehaving with devotees, he immediately stopped him. He immediately held his hand and asked him to go away from there. Asked him not to show his force again there. And then with the help of few devotees, he again brought up that railing and allowed all the devotees, allowed all the localites that were there to have darshan of the Pushpa Samadhi. So this is how we see that elevated personalities, all that are there, great devotees, they are very cautious when it comes to offending, or when it comes to criticizing other devotees or offending the devotees. So this is one thing, is that we can avoid fault finding with devotees. Secondly, another important aspect is that as we understand that devotional service is the soul's individual journey. Everyone will have his own set of anarthas, everyone will have his own set of faults, own sets of problems to deal with. And that's why Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he says that one should rather find faults in himself. One should see how he can improve as a disciple, how he can improve as a devotee, and how he can correct himself, rather than seeing fault in others. And if we see that when we meditate on someone's bad qualities, when we meditate on the faults of others, we also start developing those kind of qualities. And on the other way around, when you meditate on the good qualities of some person, when we meditate on the good qualities and also serve that person, then we get those qualities. So very, very important, first of all, avoiding fault finding. And then our second point is that finding fault in ourselves, trying to correct ourselves, improve ourselves. And also when it comes to correcting someone else, we have the expert personality, we have the authorities for correcting. So in this one example of a story of a horse is given, that how one time a horse developed a lump in his throat. So a veterinarian was called, he came with his assistant and he saw that horse had developed a big lump in his throat. So now he took up a big stick and he hit at the throat of the horse. And now the horse was cured by this. And now the assistant was confused. Assistant got puffed up, oh, this is very simple, even I can do this thing. So assistant later left that veterinarian doctor, left on his own, and he said that I can also do these kinds of things. So later on, he met with a similar circumstance. Another horse came with a similar situation came to him. He also had a lump in his throat. So now this person picked up a stick and again hit it hard on the throat of the horse. And this time the horse died. And again he was sued for it. So what happened is he didn't understand what had happened. So this person, this assistant, he went back to the veterinarian. He went back to that person. He said that you also did the same thing. You also hit the stick on the throat of the horse, but it got cured. And I also did the same thing. This person died. This horse died. And that veterinarian told, that's because you're a fool. You don't know. So he told that you didn't know that time when I had hit that stick on the throat of the horse, that time it had a melon stuck in its throat. And when I hit that stick, that melon got inside and the horse became relieved of the problem. When you hit the stick, that horse had a thyroid. And that's why when you hit the stick, that horse died. So the point is that even Prabhupada writes in his purport that how an expert spiritual master or how an expert authority, he knows that how to correct a person, how to remove the weeds that grow along with the creepers in the devotional life of a person. And he knows how to actually properly give the chastisement and properly help the devotee in advancing in devotional service. But if a person is unqualified to do that, if a person doesn't have that capability and he starts correcting others, then he ends up affecting the other person's devotional service and also becomes a detrimental to his own devotional service. So very, very important, unless one is in that position, unless one is capable to actually help others, one is capable to elevate others by finding out that faults, one should avoid finding faults in other devotees. And thirdly, and the most important thing is that if we actually, even after all this, if we commit some offense against a devotee, and if we understand, when we realize that we have committed an offense, then we try to rectify it. Rectify it simply by begging forgiveness at his lotus feet. By asking for forgiveness, because when we do that, when we beg forgiveness from the devotee, then all the offenses are gone. Then if the devotee forgives, then the offenses are removed. So these are three different things. And of course, having said all this, the most important thing is the root cause of, even when you speak about the chanting of the holy names, the offenses of the chanting of the holy names, the root cause of all offenses is inattentiveness, as we all know. Because of the inattentiveness in chanting, inattentiveness in all the different programs, we tend to commit all the different offenses, including the offense to Vaishnavas. So very, very important that we be attentive. We be attentive in throughout the morning program we have, throughout the classes we have. Because as much as we are attentive and as much as our devotional life, as much as our realizations increase, we'll avoid committing offenses. On the other hand, if we become mechanical and if we keep on being inattentive in our devotional life, in our devotional activities, then that leads to many offenses, one of them being this grave Vaishnava Aparadha. So very, very important to be, last important point, to be attentive while we are doing all the devotional activities. So with this, I would like to pause here. And I know I've spoken very big points which I heard and compiled from here and there beyond my realizations. So please pray for me that I'm also able to implement some things which I have spoken. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Anyone would like to ask anything?
we should speak, Hare Krishna. So this question that you made, the point was very nice that Jada Bharat was speaking to Maharaj Rahugan because he was in goodness and others were in ignorance. But as preachers, it's very difficult to find people in goodness. So I was thinking that what we should do, so as preachers.
We can give basically to different kind of people, we can give different ways. We can give them the sukriti, like to some people whom we see, they can understand these topics, they can understand the Gita, or they can understand the spiritual topics. We can directly speak the philosophy to them. For others, we see they are not in the position to understand all these things. We can give them some prasad, or we can invite them for a festivals, we can invite them for programs. So as and when with time they'll get some sukriti, they'll understand something, means they'll come in the position that they'll be able to understand the philosophy, they'll be able to understand those things. So not because if we start, even if we start speaking to a person in ignorance, then as Prabhupada also says that just like if we feed milk to a snake, it will become more poisonous. So if we start speaking philosophy to a person completely in ignorance, then he'll end up speaking something blaspheming us and again going away from devotional service. So in different ways, by giving them sukriti, giving them some prasadam, and inviting them for the Harinam Sankirtan, for the Kirtans, we can give them some sukriti, and when that sukriti is built up nicely, then he'll be in the position to understand the spiritual topics. But this is something which I could speak, but you can add to it.
That's good.
Can we proceed for the next class about not to commit offense? So one thing is like tendency of committing offense regarding it, like how to get rid of tendency committing. Like various examples showed like tendency is still there after life also.
So same thing as I mentioned the last 3 points. First of all, that avoiding fault finding with devotees, and then trying to fault find in ourselves, trying to see how we can improve in our devotional life. And of course that example, especially the example of that horse I gave, understanding that we are not qualified to find fault with others because we are not in that position to remove those weeds. We do not know what is a fault and what is correct. Sometimes it's possible the devotee may be doing something which is correct and we end up correcting that devotee. So understanding this position that we are not qualified, we are not in that position. So rather trying to find fault in ourselves, trying to improve ourselves. That's how we can get rid of this. And of course, when we commit an offense, trying to beg forgiveness from the person. And when we spoke of the tendency, how to get rid of the tendency, the only thing is like going deep in devotional service, going more intense in devotional service. As I mentioned, the last point of being attentive. When we are doing all the activities, as and when we are more and more attentive, as and when we hear the classes nicely, we chant nicely and do all the things nicely, then automatically we'll get realizations, we'll be able to avoid these things. We'll get that different realizations not to do these things. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Anyone else wants to ask?
And share some realizations. 1 minute is there. You will listen.
How Vaishnava Parad is very grave and very dangerous for one's for devotional service. So should be very, very cautious. So when being in the devotee association. So each and every devotee who is there is dedicated his life next. He understood, accepted that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and practicing it next to it. And since everyone has this devotional plant started, along with that the weeds also need to. So that has to be understood that we're doing some of the other weeds, but I am not the right person to take to remove those weeds. So there's some authority who can tell them. So I can just pray or whatever. So I should be cautious of my own and also how to deal with the other stuff. And finally, you nicely emphasize that what is the root cause of all the offenses to get inattentive chanting. So that I should concentrate and focus. Thank you.
Thanks for that good class. Actually, this class is meant for me. So I'm doing all these offenses. So
I should find fault in me and like I should correct it first. So that is what my take.
Hare Krishna.
Hi Krishna Prabhu. Class. So one thing you told that if we realize that we have committed some mistake in Sarvasha Samadhi and in relation with Sangashma, and the best way is to take forgiveness. And that is the only way to rectify that. So otherwise we lose our enthusiasm and taste in the form.
जो वैष्णव अपराध है वो कैसे भक्ति बात में जो अच्छा लगा था भक्ति को ऐसा लगा एकदम है तो उसमें अगर समझ में आ रहा है तो कि मैं ऑफेंस किया तो जाके भक्ति को क्षमा करना चाहिए अगर भी नहीं आ रहा है तो हम भगवान का बस मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा है कि मैं कितना मतलब कहाँ अपराध किया है तो मुझे माफ़ कर दीजिए और उसका और एक पता है कि रूट कॉज क्या है कि मैं दूसरा क्यों ऑफेंस करता हूँ कि मैं उनसे बेहतर करता हूँ मुझे अच्छे से बताया उनको पता नहीं तो इसलिए भी उनको बोलना चाहिए ऐसा करो और लास्ट में बताया जैसे ये सारी चीज़ का रूट और एक ये है कि हम साधना प्रॉपर्ली नहीं करते हैं जब भी चैंटिंग करते हैं या जो मनी प्रोग्राम करते हैं वो सारी चीज़ें में अटेंटिवली नहीं रहते वो सबसे अगर वो अटेंटिवली होगा चैंटिंग अटेंटिवली करेंगे तो ये सारी चीज़ें चला जाएगा भगवान
Hare Krishna. So you gave so many example of this where people are committing offenses, like Lakshmi Maharaj and then Pandit with Srinivas
She was
and Ramanand Puri and Durvasan. So with this, like I can practically we can see like if someone committing offense and is spiritual and material life can go nicely and better ways to nourish punishment which is sadhana, but along with that weeds also will come. So simultaneously we have to pluck it out of weeds also. So this thing, if you don't pluck out, then nourishment will not go to that bhakti.
Thank
It was very nice to hear about Vaishnava Prad and how to avoid that. So many examples that you gave. So one of the root cause which you mentioned was inattentiveness in our devotional service. So I have to focus on that. And second thing is avoid fault finding. This is something which is ingrained. So that is we have to work on. The third thing which I was also thinking about from past few days, and you also mentioned in the class, that when we start thinking that we're better than others, then naturally we'll find faults, and very much naturally we'll commit offense. So thinking oneself to be better than others is something is a poison basically, which will kill our devotional service. So I'll try to implement this. Thank you.
Mantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.